friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the brand new Perfectly Wicked stamp set from Lawn Fawn, along with a few images from Happy Harvest. I've stamped the pumpkin vine and one of the leaves in sage leaf ink, and the rest of the images I've stamped in jet black ink from Lawn Fawn so that I can color with my Copic markers. I'm going to start with one of my kitties, and I'm going to do a little black kitty. So I'm using T3, T5, and T7. Starting with the T7 and laying in some shadow on the outer edge of the body. I want to be really careful not to get too dark so that you don't see the features of the kitty. So I'm going to keep that color away from the eyes and nose and mouth. And then I'm going to come in with the T5 and begin to blend that out. Again, sticking really close to the outer edge so that I have plenty of room for that lightest shade. So like I said, it won't just be like a big black blob on the face. You want to still be able to see that cute little face. So once I have the T5 done, I will come in with the T3 and make sure to blend out really well over the edge of that T5 and just work that color around in little circular motions so I get a nice smooth blend, and fill in the rest of the tail and the front little leg there. And then while I have these markers out, I'm also going to do a few accessory images. I'm going to do one of the books to be black on this little stack here. So I'm using the T7 once again on the outer edge of that, and then coming in toward the center with the T5 so it'll get a nice highlight on the most rounded part of the spine, which would be right in the center. I'll use the T3 to fill that in. And I will also do the top and bottom of the book on the end. So the words, spells, and tricks, those are additional images that you can stamp on any of the books where they fit. Same with the frog breath and the bat wings on the vials. There are a few different options that you can choose for those as well, but I thought those would be super fun for this little scene here. So I'm moving on to the kitty on the left, and this one is going to be a gray tiger kitty. So I'm using C0, C1, and C3, starting with the C3 on the outer edges and using that for my shadow. I'm going to do kind of like a lighter gray kitty so that I can use the darker colors for the stripes. So I'm blending out with the C1, and then I'm going to come in with the C0. I'm going to leave a little white patch around the muzzle and also on the belly and the feet. And then I'm going to let that dry for a little while before I come in with my darker shades. I did grab my colorless blender to kind of just soften up the edges around the muzzle and the belly. And then I did use these shades to color in the jar that says bat wings. I wanted the color of the jar to kind of match the little description that I stamped on the label. So I went with the grays for the bat wings. And then I also used these shades to do the spine area on that last book. And then I'm going to go with some darker colors. I'm keeping the C3 but adding in C5 and C7 to do the cauldron. And I do want it to look black, so I am doing a really thick shadow on both sides to give it that really rounded appearance. And then I'll have a nice highlight in the center. And I'm going to blend that out with the C5. I'm really working over the edge of that C7 so that I get a nice smooth blend, just making sure to grab the tail end of that and then pull that toward the center. And then I'll do the same with the C3 to finish that off. And I will go back and do a second layer off screen on that as well. But before I get to that, I'm going to take the C5 to do the little tiger stripes on my gray kitty. So I'm just doing little triangle shapes. I did 2 on the top of the head and then a couple on the sides of the face. And then I'm going to add some down the arms and the back just making them sized in proportion to the area of the body where they are located. So, you know, if it's a wider place, like on the back, I'll make sure to do like a deeper stripe, but just tiny ones on the arms and legs so that they maintain that little point at the ends. And I'll add them to the tail as well, just on the underside, and left the top side plain. And I just tried to reinforce them a little bit at the top there. My C5 has a little bit of a soft nib, so I probably need to replace that soon. For my third kitty, I wanted it to be an orange tiger stripe cat, so I went with some super pale oranges, kind of like a peach shade. It's YR000 and YR00. So I use the YR00 as the darkest, and then I'm blending toward the center with the YR000. I'm going to leave a little white belly and a little white patch on this kitty's face as well, just like the gray tiger cat. I just like the way that that looks. I'm going to leave him to dry and come back and do his stripes later on, but in the meantime, I'm going to do the little details on the binding of the thicker black book on the shelf. Well, it will be on the shelf later on. So I just colored those in with that shade, and then I also did one of the crystals with just the YR000. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of a brighter and darker orange combo, and that is YR02, YR04, and YR07. And I'm going to color in the little pumpkin, and that is from Happy Harvest. So I just wanted something that was a little bit with a nod to fall, because this card is actually for our current Lawn Fanatics challenge, which is an autumn themed card. So I'm going with an autumnal color palette for this card, but I also wanted to have just a few little details in there that would be fall themed. So that I added in the pumpkin, and then I also have the little leaves that I'll be adding later on. I'm going to do another one of the books with this combo as well, and also the little bookmark that is hanging out of the open book. So I just did a little of that YR7 at the bottom and blended up with the YR4 and finished with the YR02. And now that my orange kitty has dried, I'm going to come in with the YR02 for his tiger stripes. So the reason I let it dry in between is if you go into it too quickly, Copics are made to blend, and that color is going to soften and it just won't be quite so precise. So giving it that time to dry in between will just ensure that you get those nice stripes that really stand out and have strong edges. I'm going to color in all of their noses with R20, and then I will also give them all some rosy cheeks by doing a little oval shape with the R20, and then I'll trace around the edge of that with the R11. You could pull in the R22 for the black cat if you wanted it to be more prominent, but I was fine with it the way that it was. And then I also colored the insides of their ears to be pink with those shades as well. I just did a little R20 on the outer edge of each ear and the bottom, and then blended with the R11. And then while I have those colors out, I wanted to pull that into the color palette as well. And so I'm going to do this little vial up here. Maybe it's like a love potion or something. So I just used the R20 on the outer edges and blended toward the center with the R11. And I'm going to do the cover of the book that is kind of laying flat on the ground. So I just used the R20 at the edges and the R11 as the lighter shade, and went back and did a second layer with the darker shade. And I also did the little details on the spine of the orange book. My next combo is going to be G000, G00, and G02. So I'm going to do the ends of the book that says spells, just adding the color in the same way that I did all the rest, with the darkest on the outer edge and the lightest in the center. I also used that G000 to do the glass portion of that little love potion jar, and also the other crystal. And then I'll go back to the GO2 and start with that for the container that says frog breath. So just blending toward the center again to keep it looking nice and round. So like I said, I wanted the colors to kind of match what the label was, so that's why I chose the green for that one. I'll use just the lighter two greens to do the word spells, the title of the first book. And then I'm also going to do this kind of potion that's going to be coming out of the cauldron and bubbling up with these shades as well. So I went back to my GO2 as the darkest and just kind of outline each of the little bubbles and the top edge. And then I'm blending that out with the G00, and then I'll use the G quadruple 0 and just bring that color down a bit because the die cuts out a little bit more than the bubbles. And then I'm going to add in a darker green combo, and that is YG41, YG45, and G46. And I'm going to do the cover of the open book. So that's going to be kind of like the little spell book in this scene. So I'm just blending that out, adding some little dark corners and the very center of the spine, and then a little bit of highlight on the top of the book and on the centers of the open parts. And I'll do the stem of my pumpkin with the darkest two shades. For the book pages, I wanted to go with something really light, so I chose E000 and E00. So I did a little E00 on the outer edges and then blended toward the center with the E000 and let that fade into the white. And then I'm going to do the same for the labels on the little glass vials. And then I'm going to switch it up and use E51 and E53 for a few more accessories. I'm going to do the corks in the jars with just that E53. And then I'm going to do the wooden spoon with both of those shades and also the stool. And I'm going to end up adding in a third shade because I hardly ever like just two shades. It's very rare. So I'm going to end up adding in the E50 to just serve as a highlight on both of those items. And then I decided not to bring in a new color for the shelf. I'm just going to use a lot more of that E53 so it's a bit darker, and I layered that on a couple of times, and then I'm blending toward the center with the E51, and I'll use a little of the E50 to finish that off, and then I will trim all of these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I've taken the outside in stitch rectangle stackables and die cut a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock with that. I'm going to mask off the floor with a little bit of post-it tape. I didn't have it on there quite straight the first time, so I just repositioned that and then wrapped the ends around the back to keep that secure. And then I'm going to start with some spun sugar. I want to create a look that's kind of like this combo of like a peachy pink. So I started with that spun sugar and laid on a good amount of that from both of the top corners and then down the sides right up to that tape that's serving as my mask. And then I'm going to come in with some carved pumpkin, and I'm being really careful with this color. I don't want too much of it because I don't want this to look orange. I want it to be kind of like a peach. So I'll go back to my spun sugar and blend over the edge of that. And you know, you may be able to just go straight in with like a peachy Distress Oxide, but I don't have one. The only orangey shade that I have is the carved pumpkin. So I'm working over that with the spun sugar, but I decided that the spun sugar was just a little too pale to get me where I needed to go. So I'm going to bring in Kitsch Flamingo, which is a brighter pink. It's just a bit darker than the spun sugar, but it's going to really instantly transform this background into what I was going for. It kind of reminds me of like orange sherbet. Then I'm going to take this little sparkle image that is in the Perfectly Wicked stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that down in the carved pumpkin ink because I just wanted to add like a little texture for some wallpaper. And then I'm going to come in and reposition this mask. I want to create a baseboard, so I'm going to come down just a bit so that it will leave a little bit of a white bar. I want to make sure that that is perfectly straight though, because it'll be obvious if it isn't. So I just repositioned that mask, and now I'm going to come in with some hickory smoke for the floor. And I'm going to sponge that on in the opposite direction. So it'll be darkest at the bottom two corners and then kind of softer at the top edge. To darken that up, I'll bring in some black soot, and again, because it is a strong color, I'm being really careful to just lay down a little bit, and then I'll go back to my hickory smoke blending tool and make sure that that is nicely blended out. And then I can remove that mask and reveal my little scene there with the baseboard. For my sentiment, I'm going to stamp one of the little greetings from the Perfectly Wicked set in some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I just wanted something that was really dark and bold, and it didn't stamp perfectly in the center since this is a brand new stamp. So I just restamped the center of that and used my Twiddler's Nook pressure pal to make sure I had a good impression. And then I'm going to use a narwhal card base, and I'm going to stamp on the inside using Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, which is the same ink that I used to stamp my images. I just didn't use it for my sentiment because that sentiment was so new. That VersaFine Onyx Black ink, it really lays down nicely even on brand new stamps that need to be, conditioned a little bit. So I added some foam tape to the back of my focal panel, and I'm going to center that on my narwhal card base. It is a standard A2 size card, so it's 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall. And then I trimmed out that sentiment with one of the Everyday Sentiment banners. I'm going to cut the end so it will be flush with the edge of the focal panel. And then I'll add some of my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue to that. And I'm going to go ahead and put that on the card at the top because the rest of my scene needs to be spaced correctly, especially with the bookshelf that will be on the wall. So I want to make sure that that sentiment was on there first so I can just set everything else around it. I glued that little bubbling concoction into the cauldron, and I'm going to put that down in the very center of the scene, really close to the edge of the baseboard. I want it to be set back so I can add some more additional images out in front. But beside it, I'm going to take my little gray tiger kitty and put him there, and then he's going to be the one that's kind of stirring up the spell, so I'm going to give him the wooden spoon. And then on the other side, I'm going to put the little stool, and then on top of that, I'm going to add the flat book, and then I'm going to add that right over top. I'm going to cover up the white die cut edge of the stool so that there's only one there. And then I'm going to take the kitty and I'm going to tuck the white die cut edge behind the book. So again, there's only one die cut edge. It almost makes them all look like one cohesive image. So then I'm going to take my bookshelf now that I have those kitties positioned and figure out where I want that to go. I need to make sure that there's room for all the stuff that's going to be stacked on top of it. So I'm going to grab the books first because they are the tallest. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to tuck them behind the shelf so that there's not like two of those white die cut edges showing. It'll just be the one. And then I'm going to add the pumpkin on the left side of that, just sitting up there. And then on the right side, I'm going to do the vial that says Frog's Breath. And then next to that, I'll put my little love potion. And I'm working quickly with these images because that Barely Art Precision Craft Glue dries super fast. So I want to get this little spiral vine coming out of the pumpkin tucked back behind that. And then I want one of the little leaves sticking out from there as well. So I'm just tucking that back behind the stem. And then I'm going to finish off the rest of the scene down in front, starting with the open book. So that's going to be the little spell book that these guys are working from. So I'm going to put that down kind of to the left of the cauldron, and then I'm going to add the black cat kind of to the right of that. So I did that cat black on purpose because of the superstition about a black cat crossing the path. At least there's one here in the States. I don't know if that's all over. Leave me a comment down below if it's true where you live. But anyway, I wanted that cat to kind of be like a nod to that superstition. So that's crossing the path out in front. Then I'm adding one of the crystals to the orange tiger cat's paw, and the other crystal I'm going to add down in front with the bat wings vial. And then I just have those two leaves. So I tucked one back behind the bat wings vial, and then the other one I'll just put over on the right hand side to kind of balance that out. And then to finish off the card, I wanted to add a little bit of sparkle, so I grabbed my favorite Stardust Stickles and added a bit of that to the love potion. And of course I had to add some to the two crystals because they had to have some sparkle. And then I'm going to add it to the bookmark that's hanging out of the book, and also to the concoction that these kitties are brewing up, just mainly in the bubble areas. And then I also put some on the spine of the thicker book at the top and on the centers of the three leaves. I'll lift that up so you can get a closer look at all of the detail and give you guys another peek at the inside as well. I think these kitties are so cute. I absolutely love this stamp set. So hopefully you like it too. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any future videos. I post new ones every Monday and Friday. If you're interested in these products, you'll find them listed and linked in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, you can click on either one of these videos to check them out. You can also check out any of my playlists. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.